When Emma's key worker returned from her break, a colleague told her that Emma had not settled for her sleep and had been sick. Following this, Emma was admitted to hospital for tests. She was found to be suffering from malnutrition. The action plan has been put into place to make sure Emma's needs are met at home and at nursery, and the correct people have got involved to make sure the family have had enough support to help fix the issues at home and make sure Emma is safe and well. There are reasons why a child will no longer need to be under a plan, and that would be when it is judged that the child is no longer continued to or believed to be suffering insignificant harm. When the child has reached 18 years old, the liaison officer should conduct a review around the time of child's 18th birthday when the plan can be ended, if the child has died or if the child has permanently left the UK. The Department for Education are responsible for child protection in England. Legislations have developed over time, sadly, often after children have become victims. It has set out policies, legislation and statutory guidance on how the child protection system should work. Legal and policy frameworks relating to child protection. Apart from parents, carers, other family members and friends, practitioners get to see children and young people more than any other person. This makes their role very important. One of the most recent pieces of legislation relevant to this subject was published in March 2015. This is the update in Working Together to Safeguard Children. This sets out how organisations and individuals should work together to safeguard and promote the welfare of children in accordance with the Children's Act 2004. This document provides statutory guidance about safeguarding for all those who work with children. In each local authority there is a local Safeguarding Children Board, LSCB. This is a key system for each part of the UK for local organisations to work together and agree on how they will cooperate in order to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. The LSCBs are responsible for local child protection policy, procedures and guidance. Looking back through legislations over time, it shows me that there are no significant changes between 1948 and 1970. The key legislation which occurred between the 1970s and the end of the 20th century consisted of the Children's Act 1984 and the Protection of Children's Act 1999. Examples of legislations. Since 1889 there has been over 22 changes or additions made to the legislation's timeline. This is an indication that society is starting to take notice of what has been going on for centuries and is attempting to do something about it. In 1889, the first Act of Parliament for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, commonly known as the Children's Charter, was passed. In 1945, the first formal child death inquiry in England was the Curtis Committee report into the death of Dennis O'Neill, who was killed at the age of 12 by his foster father. And in 1948, the Children's Act was established, a children's committee and a children's officer in each local authority. It followed the creation of the Parliamentary Care of Children Committee in 1945, followed by the death of Dennis O'Neill at the hands of his foster parents. A child protection plan is drawn up by the local authority. It sets out how the child can be kept safe and how things can be made better for the family and what support they will need. As a parent, you should be told the reason for the plan, what you should do to make sure the child is still protected, what services are being offered, who you should contact for more information. The local authority will decide whether a child protection plan is needed by taking into account the information discussed at the Child Protection Conference, which would be the start of the child protection plan. Before we start this next slide, it is important to understand what values and beliefs are and what the meaning of discrimination, prejudice and bias are. Beliefs are concepts that we hold to be true and can be very individual to every person. Values are ideas that we hold to be very important again and can also be very individual to every person. Values govern the way we behave, communicate and interact with others, and combined with beliefs they determine our attitudes and opinions. Whatever a person has done, you must respect each and every person and their individual beliefs and values. When child protection cases are being investigated, practitioners may find that they are working with children, their families, and in some cases with the perpetrators of abuse. This can be very challenging and emotionally draining for the practitioner, who must remain objective at all times. Prejudice indicates that an opinion or judgment is formed prematurely without considering all the available facts. Bias is having a prejudice or an unbalanced view that influences your thinking or behaviour. Discrimination is where a person is treated differently from other people in particular situations. In the UK, it is against the law to discriminate against anyone who has what is termed a protected characteristic. The legislation that protects everyone from discrimination is the Equality Act 2010. All people are protected from discrimination in work, in education and in public. Core social work values relating to child protection include things like respect, trust, compassion, empathy, discretion and confidentiality. It is the things that most people would agree are important to hold when working in any profession. Anti-discriminatory practice. Ways to encourage anti-discriminatory in practice. Supervisions would be a good idea. By establishing a supervisory contract, the role of supervision in promoting anti-discriminatory practice is identified. This would allow social workers to explore their own values, assumptions and attitudes in relation to issues of discrimination during their supervision meetings. There are many types of discrimination, including retaliation discrimination, racial discrimination, disability discrimination, sexual discrimination, age discrimination. There are also many ways to discriminate. For example, you could be direct, indirect, associative, perceptive, harassment. It is important to create equal opportunity policy to promote treating people equally to encourage anti-discriminatory practice. Educate employees about different types of discrimination in the workplace and take immediate action to address complaints. Now we're going to be looking at theoretical perspectives relating to child protection that will inform practice. We will be looking at the main question relating to child protection, and that is, why are children abused? Many theorists have ideas on why they think children are abused, and there are many theorists, but today we're just going to be looking at two: the cycle of abuse and the social learning model. We will start with the cycle of abuse. This theory was developed by Lenore Walker, this lady right here, in 1979 through her work with victims of domestic abuse rather than specifically child abuse. This theory suggests that if a parent has been abused themselves as a child, they are likely to become an abuser. Some studies report that in a third of reported child abuse cases, the perpetrator had been abused themselves. We also have the social learning model by Albert Bandura, this gentleman here. He published the social learning model in 1977 following his research with young children. He believed that children learn by observing and copying others. His most famous experiment was with a Badoo doll. This is a Badoo doll. The idea of his theory is that if a child witnesses or suffers abuse, then that child may go on to abuse others in turn. Skills relating to working in child protection that inform practice. All of these different skills make a huge difference when working in child protection or any job role, really. These should be your foundation skills, as it enables you to build purposeful, effective relationships with children and families, demonstrate a high level of skill in evidence-based, effective social work and approaches to helping children and families which support change, and possesses an ability to critically evaluate levels of seriousness that different risks present, actual and likelihood of significant harm, balanced with family strengths and potential solutions. Interpersonal skills are also very important, as they are used to interact with others properly and effectively within the role. You need to be able to communicate professionally with your colleagues and also objectively with clients or service users. You should always work in non-judgmental. Interpersonal skills are also very important, as they are used to interact with others properly and effectively within your role. You need to be able to communicate professionally with your colleagues and also objectively with your clients or service users. You should always work in a non-judgmental way. Today, the caring professionals share the same 6 core values known as the 6 C's. These include care, compassion, competence, communication, courage and commitment. Care, putting other people's needs above your own. Compassion, developing an understanding about somebody else's life. Competence, this could be relevant training. Communication, to communicate professionally and effectively. Courage, to stand up for what's right and deal with demanding situations. And commitment, to show your dedication to your job role. Interpersonal skills are also very important as they are used to interact with others properly and effectively within your role. You need to be able to communicate professionally with your colleagues and also objectively with clients or service users. You should always work in a non-judgmental way. The 6 C's are very important to remember as they are a vital part of your job role. These include the skills, values and knowledge that underpin the best practice for all practitioners who care for and support people in our society. So we've got care, putting other people's needs above your own, which is very important. Compassion, developing an understanding about somebody's life, not feeling sorry for them, but just understanding where they're coming from. Competence, this could be relevant training like first aid. Communication, to communicate professionally and effectively with different colleagues or service users. And courage, to stand up for what's right and deal with demanding situations. That's very important because there will be a lot of demanding situations within child protection. And finally, commitment, to show dedication to your job role and the person you're trying to protect. And that's all for this presentation. If you have any questions, please do ask. Thank you very much.